still, if you don't know really your supply chain and don't tell anyone about it, it's like you cannot really be sure that everyone is okay, basically, in the supply chain.
Welcome back to Responsible Impact, a production of MagicLinks. We connect brands and influencers, and this is the show where we take a good look at all things sustainability and e-commerce. Remember when your math teacher would dock you points because you didn't show your work? Think of all the things you purchased which you know involved other people in the production, and how you have no way of knowing if those people were leveraged or taken advantage of, how you have no way of knowing if they were okay. If you disagree with the companies who treat their vendors and other human beings this way, you've hardly any way to know because no one talks about it. That shroud of secrecy, that, well, we're not responsible because it's a vendor's vendor, 2 continents and several degrees of legal liability away from us. That's a practice that is actively hurting people, and it mostly makes our closets, which really should be a source of joy and expression, instead the final result of a fractured maze of ethical nightmares. The spirit of what measuring and transparency are meant to do is not to leverage people into inhumane, sometimes illegal or dangerous situations, but to make sure that they are safe from them. And it all comes together in a beautiful way when you look at Nudie Jeans. They show their math. You can see it in their lovingly crafted transparency, in granular reports on their website. These are no corporate speak, buck-passing documents. These are the work of individuals and a company who collectively care and are holding themselves accountable because they have nothing to hide. And in fact, they want to see where they could be even better. This effort is spearheaded by Nudies' sustainability manager, Sandya Lang. And, well, I'll let her take it from here.
My name is Sandya Lang. I work as the sustainability manager at Nudie Jeans and have been doing so since 2011. Before that, I worked with ethical t-shirt production in Sri Lanka and shoe production in Vietnam. So that gave me a lot of experience from the factory floor and also the understanding of the daily life of the employees. I also hold a master's in development studies, so my interest really was from the start how Western companies were acting in developing countries and how that is affecting the workers, for example, in the textile industry. So I was doing my field work in India, in Bangalore, interviewing garment workers back in 2007 or 8 or something. And I guess that's how it started with the textile industry. And so today I overlook the sustainability work at Nudie Jeans and work on a daily basis with the social aspects of the supply chain, mostly transparency and living wages, but also the social compliance are topics that I work with on a daily basis.
Did you end up switching from development studies and almost, it sounds like adjacent human rights issues. Did you end up switching intentionally into textiles? How did you end up making that jump into such a specific aspect of industry?
It was actually when I was doing my field work. I was doing that in India, and I was interested in how companies were working with the code of conducts and other frameworks and how that was impacting the workers in any supply chain, I guess. But then my Indian contact had some friends working in the textile industry, different factories and so on in Bangalore. So it was quite easy for me to get in touch with those workers and have these interviews, both in the textile factories, but also at home. Of course, it's quite interesting when you start to dig into this topic. So that's really how I got started. And then also when I later on moved to Sri Lanka to work in this textile factories, it's you kind of build on different experiences, I guess.
Nice. So Nudie Jeans, I guess, give us the history of your work with them. How did you find each other? What has your work evolved to be since you've been with them?
Well, I started in 2011, but the company itself was founded 20 years ago now, in 2001. So Maria Eriksson Levin was the founder, together with Joachim Levin and Palle Stenberg. They had an idea of a new kind of company, a brand who took responsibility for the people and the planet while designing high-quality denim. And I think now, after 20 years down the line, we are still on the kind of the same path, working with this on a daily basis. Our owners also are in the office every day, and Joachim Levin is the CEO. So when I joined in 2011, I think the company was well on the way to become a very sustainable brand. But so far, at the time when I joined, I think we were about 30 employees or something. And everyone was working a little bit with everything, as it is in small companies. But then, as my position was the first sustainability manager, I had also a great opportunity to develop the work into areas where I find it relevant and for us to be successful within. So I think maybe we will talk about that a bit later, but transparency work, for example, was something that we talked about very early on, living wages as well, to make sure that everyone in the supply chain is having a fair wage and so on. Those kind of things has been important for me, but also for the company, I think, for many years now.
Before we dive into Nudie Jeans and then some more into your specific work at Nudie, I would love to hear more about what you wish people could understand about working conditions. There's a lot that we don't see because we just simply never go to these places, but you've been there, right? So kind of give listeners an idea of what you wish they could see if they could go.
I think it's a great question, actually. I mean, before joining the industry in this way, I think you cannot really understand fully the impact that you have as a consumer when you buy something and how many people are actually involved in making that product for you along the whole supply chain, back to the raw material, for example. What we try to show also is to really visualize the people along the supply chain, from the cotton fields, the farmers, the production people, everyone basically in the supply chain. I think that is something that maybe more and more people are interested in, but I think so far not so many people have actually visited a cotton field, for example, or seen a denim factory.
What are the things that you think most need to change in those areas?
I think for the industry, it's definitely transparency. It's starting to move a bit, I think, in this area. But I mean, for many, many years, it has been difficult to actually find out which brands are producing in which factories, and they are not transparent about it on the website, for example, maybe because of competitive reasons and so on. But still, if you don't know really your supply chain and don't tell anyone about it, it's like you cannot really be sure that everyone is okay, basically, in the supply chain. So I think that's a really crucial part, and I think that needs to change if the whole industry is going to change.
Are you saying that increasing transparency in fashion supply chains is the sort of the backbone step to improving other issues related to work and safety?
Yeah, definitely. And also, if you talk about the climate work and everything that's happening now, like more and more brands are actually starting to map their supply chains and trying to make plans to reduce the CO2 emissions, for example. If you're going to do that, you need to know your suppliers and need to know their emissions, first of all. So, of course, transparency and have a quite of a consolidated supply chain, I guess, would be beneficial for most brands. Otherwise, it's quite difficult.
So back up 20 years, we go back to 2001, which is crazy to think that that's 20 years ago. But, crises of the time-space continuum aside, 20 years ago, Nudie Jeans enters the market. And that was a very different time. I mean, that was as places like Gap were really, really doing well, and Old Navy and Forever 21 was really getting its legs underneath it. H&M was doing well. These were places that really have a very different business ethic. And some of them have shifted over the years, but at the time, right? Very different culture, very different industry landscape. How did Nudie, what informed them getting started, and how did they survive in an industry that was so different and cutthroat?
Yeah, I think maybe it was sort of a coincidence in a way, because as you said, there was a totally different kind of market out there back then. And I think Nudie Jeans came in as a new interesting brand that was doing something different from the others. And I think also, I mean, the price points we sell our jeans in is a little bit higher, of course, than the brands that you mentioned just. And I think that is also kind of important in this sense, because we also try to sort of motivate the price by all the added value that comes into the product. For example, that we were producing the denim in Italy. It's very high quality denim. We are making sure that the workers are receiving a fair payment and so on. And we work only with organic cotton. So, of course, there's a lot of added value to the product that maybe the other brands didn't have at the time. And I think maybe the reasons also why we have been able to be successful in this field is independence that we have. I mean, I didn't mention that, but we have the owners of Nudie Jeans is still Maria, Palle, and Joachim, and they never took in any external investors. So it's a privately owned brand by the three owners. And this independence has always been very important to us. It's kind of enabled us to focus on what we think is important, to stay true to the core business and our mission, and basically do what we want to do.
So Nudie Jeans starts, and they have this wonderful vision, and they're able to have this value add. But how were they able to find enough customers to grow and to continue through these early years, again, when so much of the industry looked so different?
In the very beginning, and I mean, for the first 10 years or more, actually, almost like 12, 15 years, the wholesale business has been really the backbone. We have had collaboration with so many great retailers out there that sort of build the brand in a way and also spread the brand around the world. So they are really to thank for the growth of the brand in the very start. In the very early years, I think the revenues were going up like year by year. But it was really a success story in that way. And I think it was because in the Swedish market, or in the Scandinavian market at least, there were no brands at the time like Nudie Jeans. There were Levi's and they were like H&M maybe, but they didn't really have the same kind of denim feeling. And we were something different from Levi's, for example. So I think that's attracted a lot of people.
To go back to Nudie Jeans, the company is growing. There's still not a huge sustainability movement happening worldwide, but they've found kind of their audience and they're doing well. And then comes 2011 and you join. And so then talk about the company as it was when you first came on board.
Yeah, when I came on board, I think we had a lot of ambitions. There were many people who had ideas about what we're going to do, and we didn't have really set agenda. So when I came in, it was kind of my job to sort of first map the supply chain, for example, like exactly where are we producing our garments. I mean, we knew we had our main suppliers, but then we also had a lot of different sub-suppliers for like laundry, embroidery, packaging, printing, for example. So I started to basically do the work, doing social auditing together with our member organization, Fairwear Foundation, and their audit teams. So doing audits, following up on those issues that was coming out of the audits, making sure that we did improvements. I spent a lot of time visiting all the suppliers in the first years, also participating in those audits and having discussions on site and really trying to understand each and every location and their needs sort of to improve and to understand maybe the more formalized way of working that was what I was trying to introduce to them. I mean, of course, we know that, for example, wages in Italy are okay, but they are maybe different in different areas of Italy, for example. And we tried to dig deeper into the supply chain, basically. That was my job at the very start. I was actually going to India just after 3 weeks following up an audit. So that was my first big task to do, I guess. But that was really successful because we started to discuss about living wages in the supply chain at that visit very early on. And that was something that we were able to develop the year after. So, of course, those kind of direct contacts with the suppliers that I guess not so many other brands have in that way is really beneficial for us and for our collaboration with the suppliers. Sometimes, I mean, for the denim, we have quite a big volume. For example, in the denim suppliers, we are not maybe 100%, but we are maybe 20 or 25 or even 30 sometimes. But for the smaller product groups, like t-shirts and jackets and so on, we maybe only count for like 3 or 5% of the total production. So in those cases, we need to have something else to discuss about as well. Today, I would say that many of our suppliers are really happy to work with us, maybe not due to our quantities, but mostly due to our values and how we do business.
When you first started approaching these companies as you came on board and talking about like fair wages and changes, how did those conversations go? How were they received?
I had mostly success at Indian and Turkish suppliers maybe, and somewhat in the Tunisian factories as well. I would say that Portugal and Italy were quite difficult in the beginning, I would say, especially coming from Sweden, demanding things while they think that they already have everything under control. That was kind of maybe a bit of a culture clash in the beginning. But then I think also eventually they understood that we're doing this because we want to see improvement together. And they have also, of course, received more business when we are one of their customers. So nowadays, I would say that many of our suppliers are quite happy that we are introducing more strict maybe requirements and following up discussions and implementing our share of living wages and so on, because they need to have some kind of example of brands who are actually doing these kind of things. Otherwise, it's really difficult to convince other brands to join in, for example.
Yeah. Explain to listeners, why is organic cotton so important?
Yeah, it's a great question, very important question. We started the organic cotton journey back in 2006. So at the very beginning, in 2001, it was not so many organic garments in the collection, mainly due to the volumes needed to produce organic, because you need to produce a full line, basically, in the factory. So we started in 2006, and we tried to convince our suppliers to produce organic cotton fabrics for us only. It was not the easiest task to do, because at that time, not so many other brands were requesting it. And then the financial crisis hit in 2008, and there was suddenly a drop in the request of organic cotton. So it wasn't until 2012 that we reached the goal to become 100% organic for the denims. I think the important part, and why we stress so much to have organic cotton, is the fact that it's really the most sustainable type of cotton, if you're going to use cotton, that you can find. And it's most sustainable for both the local environment, the biodiversity, and also the farmers. When you use conventional grown cotton, there's a lot of chemicals that is used on the fields for fertilizers and pesticides and so on. As most of the cotton is grown in like India or Turkey, and where workers maybe are not able to read the chemical instructions on how to wear protective garments and so on, they are really exposed to these chemicals. And it creates a lot of course, illnesses and trouble for them. In the organic cotton fields, you can also grow other vegetables in between the plants to, for example, have an extra income, support your own family, but also to sell it. And if you spray with something like harmful chemicals on it, of course, you cannot really eat it. It's really better for the soil as well to grow organically. You can find organic cotton where you have like a crop diversity. The soil is much more nutrient, of course. If you grow conventional grown cotton, it's going to work for a few years maybe. But after that, the soil will be totally dead, and you cannot really grow anything else on it later on. So I would say that conventional grown cotton may be profitable in the short run, but definitely not in the long run.
I would love to also hear about the dyeing process.
Yeah. So what you see when people are walking knee-high up in blue dyeing liquids, that is happening. We are quite committed to source from specific countries. Again, keeping track of your supply chain, knowing where your products are. So we have a very strict sourcing policy, for example, that only enables us to source from the existing countries that we are in right now, which is Portugal and Italy, Tunisia, Turkey, and India, and Poland. We have very few suppliers in each country, and we have nominated all the suppliers for production and for fabric manufacturing and so on. We know exactly which factories are producing our garments and are also doing the dyeing, for example. And that is a very important part. We also visited all of our suppliers, so we know also how it looks like inside the facilities who are dyeing. So, for example, in India, where we have visited several times, we can see that they are using this kind of enclosed dyeing operations. So they have a closed water management system that also handles all the waters and the chemicals and the salt that is also needed for the dyeing process. Those dyeing facilities that we work with are also, in most cases, GOTS certified. It's a great way of also keeping control over the chemicals that are used inside, because the number of chemicals and the amount of chemicals and the amount of water is going hand in hand, basically. So you cannot really reduce water without reducing chemicals first. So I would say that for the industry to change, I think transparency again is really crucial. Those brands which garments are made in those like horrific conditions might not be even aware of the situation that they create. That is the crucial part, knowing your supply chain and knowing how it looks like. And we also have a routine of when we visit all the suppliers, we also visit all water management treatment plants. It's not really exciting as such, but it's really kind of important to do that. And we make sure that they are taking their tests. They need to do that on a regular basis. And some of the bigger ones have their own water treatment plants where you can actually see in different steps how the water is treated and purified, and then suddenly, after many steps, it's so clean that you can actually release it into the water streams. Like in Italy, we have seen this process several times. They're using the water and then purifying it and then releasing it. So you cannot really say that you used up all the water, but it's kind of transformed in a way along the production cycle. But of course, if you are having production in countries where there's a lack of water, it's really important to know ways that you can reduce the water quantity and to make sure it's not using groundwater, for example, to make the dyeings.
Sounds like you want to make sure that you're not diverting the water that people need to grow crops or to drink and just to live as people.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha. You mentioned GOTS. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's the Global Organic Textile Standard, which is one of the better certification schemes that are out there, I guess. For a product to be certified according to the GOTS, you need to have certification for all the steps along the production. So, for example, we need to have cotton, raw material, that is GOTS. We also need to have the spinning units, the dyeing units, the knitting units, and the manufacturing unit certified. And we at the head office and our warehouse need to be certified. So actually, we managed to do that last year. And in this winter collection we have now, we have a few products that are certified, like a total products. Otherwise, we're using a lot of raw material already that are certified, and also a lot of washes that are certified. We cannot really claim the whole product yet if not all the steps in between are certified.
Gotcha. So as a consumer, what are the things that I'm going to see in terms of sustainability? And I know you guys also have wonderful repair programs. Talk about all the things that from my consumer perspective help make this a different journey.
Yeah, what you see, first of all, if you step into one of our stores, it would be the sewing machine, I guess, because it's normally very centralized in the store. And I mean, the consumer phase, I guess, is all about prolonging the life of the garment. So we have a core product, the dry denim, which is not washed in production, like a raw denim. And the idea is that you can wear it for as long as you like. We recommend at least 6 months before the first wash to get this kind of a nice break-in effect that we think is very beautiful. Maybe not everyone agrees on that, but if you don't agree, you can always buy the pre-washed denim and have a job already done, so to say. But I guess when this dry denim, if you do the work properly, you not only get like a very personalized look on your jeans, you also show your lifestyle, and it contributes to minimizing the environmental impact as well by less home washing. But if you wear a pair like for a very long time, they will eventually break somewhere. Then it's where we come in and offer free repairs in our stores. So we do that in all of our own stores, but we also start to offer that same service in some selected retailers that we call repair partners. And sometimes we have mobile repair station touring in Europe and Australia. I'm not sure about US, but maybe also in US. And if you live too far from any of our stores, you can also, as a consumer, order a free repair kit online. It's a repair kit with some patches and a needle and thread and so on. But still, it's like a service we want to give to the consumers. We normally repair a lot of jeans every year. Back in 2019, we repaired 63,000 pairs. Last year, now 2020 was, of course, different in many ways. So demand was considerably lower, but I think it was around 40,000 now that we repaired last year anyway. And we also have this take back system in the store. So if you have an old pair of Nudie Jeans laying around that no longer fit you, you can hand them in to us and we take those back and you get a discount on a new pair. And we also collect those jeans. Some is used for patching materials for the other jeans to be repaired. And some are sold again as the reused jeans that we also have. Like secondhand jeans, and some is stored for the next recycling project. So for the reuse jeans that we have, it's actually kind of a success story in a way. We started out in a very small scale with that in some selected stores and had that for a few years. So you can go in a store and find a range of different reused jeans that other customers handed back. We do a selection there and select only the nicest ones or the good ones and try to have a variety of sizes and all that. But in 2018, we also took this online. So since 2018, we had different reuse drops online where you as a consumer can buy globally, basically, the secondhand jeans. And it's been a great success and a lot of attention in the media actually about it as well. So personally, I think that's a great thing. And I think we're also contributing a bit to kind of changing the perceptions of people's minds regarding secondhand garments, at least here in Scandinavia. A few years back, it was not really that popular, but now we see a lot of different new companies coming up offering secondhand and renting and, different types of circular business models. I think we try to see the product as resources rather than like waste when it's used. And then we also have the recycling thing. So if you are in a store, you can also see some other products that we made earlier, maybe caps and bags. And in some places, we still have some denim rugs, I think, with post-consumer jeans. And last year, we launched a capsule collection where we made a new fabric and new products with old post-consumer Nudie Jeans that was sort of torn apart and blended in with new organic cotton and made into a new fabric. And that is kind of a great combination of making something sustainable, but also very good looking. And that was also a great success and sold out quite quickly. So I'm not sure if it's any left in the stores. And then the latest addition to this is also in the recycling space, I guess. It's a blanket that we did in Australia, a very limited quantity, and sort of a way to close the loop a bit in our Australian shops. We like to do this kind of collaborations as well. And I mean, a rug or blanket is a product that you can actually use for a very, very long time. So it's a great way of prolonging the life of the garments, I guess.
I'll say. Yeah. I'm thinking back to some blankets I have. I have blankets from my grandmother, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're most proud of that Nudie Jeans does and that you've helped bring to them in your work?
Well, I guess it's a lot of things, actually. I mean, I guess where we are today, I mean, as the brand position, I guess. More specifically, I think the work with living wages is definitely an area that I have been working with a lot, but also is a quite complex area to work with, especially to show that a small brand like Nudie Jeans can do something. You can actually start to pay something extra for your garments to make sure that everyone in the supply chain is getting a fair wage, for example. And I think that is something that's, I'm quite proud that we are able to do that, and that we have been able to also encourage other brands to jump on that journey with us.
Your sustainability report that you sent me was beautiful and so in-depth. It was really like, I felt almost like I was a garment expert at the end of reading it. I was like, oh, I've learned so
Perfect.
much. Yeah. Talk to me about why you guys put the time and effort into producing that, and then also into sort of the new transparency work that you're doing with each pair of jeans for consumers.
The sustainability report, it's, as you said, it's quite massive. And I guess not everyone is reading it like from A to Z, but still we want to explain things, how it is and what we have done. We are not so much explaining about like what we want to do or the goals that we have. I mean, there's a small section about that as well in the end, but mostly it's about what we are doing and how many kgs of cotton we're using and so on, and a lot of details in it. But I guess it's a way for us to say that we do know all of these things and we have control over our supply chain, and we encourage other brands to have the same kind of detailed information to the consumers. We know that not every consumers are interested in reading all that, but if they are, they should be able to find the info. It's a great way of presenting our sustainability work. You can also see it's connected to a lot of different things. It's connected to the marketing, it's connected to the wholesale business, and the more and more sustainable retailers out there demanding also that we are improving year by year. We can see more and more that sustainability is really integrated in many of the business areas that we work with. And now I would say we are in the process of writing the new report, which is it's a job to be done.
Never, an annual report. As soon as you finish with one, you sort of
basically
the next one and start.
Yeah. So the new one will be probably online in like beginning or mid-April, I guess. If not something unexpected happens, like Corona or something.
Oh gosh. Let's talk about that. What has coronavirus done to your supply chains and your work as a company?
Of course, it has had a lot of impacts on our whole business, financially, obviously, but also for the suppliers in our supply chain. We have suppliers in Italy, so we were quite early on aware about the situation because they closed down quite soon in March, I guess. In the very beginning, I think the focus for us was to really making sure that we got the orders out and be able to deliver it to our warehouse and so on, and making sure, of course, that the people working in the facilities were safe, and if they are not, so they were home with payment and so on. The very first months of the COVID situation were making sure that all the partners in the supply chains were doing okay. We tried to identify those who needed some financial help, for example, which we did for some suppliers, for example, with prepayment of fabrics, flexible deliveries, and additional living wage payments we did as well. Trying to basically make the risk analysis and identify those suppliers that are most in risk and trying to help them the best we could. And then after a while, I think we saw that we also needed to support the retailers. We had a lot of retailers that were also heavily impacted by the COVID situation. For example, we decided to have our summer sale a month later, so they had a chance to sell our products instead first, so we don't compete with them on the sales. We are trying to have like a very tight dialogue with all of our partners throughout the time, and basically trying to be flexible as we could and trying to help out when we could.
It's really lovely to hear about people who are being generous and supportive, because that's what it's going to take to get us through, right? All of us, industry included.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'd love to chat with what you guys do with any inventory that doesn't sell, or with inventory, like, people who are like, I can't keep these anymore, I don't fit these, whatever. I know you said that some of it goes towards repair stock, but I'm asking this because, of course, there are companies who do this terrible practice where they incinerate extra merchandise. What do you guys do? And then also, how do you dialogue with brands that you come across who do that terrible practice? Like, do you engage with them at all and ask them to like not do
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we are using all Nudie Jeans products we're trying to use. We're not throwing away anything, basically. That's why we have a big stock piling up in the warehouse, which is also not good, but it's like it's on a waiting list to do something about it. Yeah, we're trying to use the things that we have for different projects, like we done before with the post-consumer fabrics, for example, where we are collaborating with our Turkish suppliers to use them for new fabrics. Maybe the best product that we did so far has been maybe the denim rugs, because then you don't need to process the raw material again to make the new fabric. It's sort of an upcycled product. We're trying to see where we can do such new products as well. If we interact with other brands, I don't know really. We do have a lot of collaborations with other brands and a lot of dialogues with other brands, but not regarding this topic, I think. We are more working with different projects on a national level, but also industry level, to see new changes and to make research and a new legislation and so on. For example, now in Sweden, it's coming new rule or regulation about textile producer responsibility and those kind of things. So I think we try to work with these things more on a structural way or more on an industry-based level rather than brand to brand. I also want to highlight a bit what we did like end of last year, where we managed to get product transparency on the web shop. So if you go in there and find the collection for fall 20 or winter 20, you can see the full supply chain with all the details to the raw material suppliers. And this is something that is not really, it doesn't exist in the textile industry, I would say, today. A lot of brands do have their first tier suppliers, meaning the textile factories where the products are sewn together, listed maybe online, but not so many other brands have the full supply chain with all the details, with the trims and with the laundries and packing units and printing units and raw material suppliers and so on. So I think that is something also that we are really proud of being able to put together through, even though we've been impacted by the COVID crisis as well. But this is definitely something that's going to push us further to add more details to it. We are thinking about adding CO2 emissions and water usage, for example, for each of the production steps. So this is something that I hope we'll be able to show in the coming year.
How would you even go about measuring all that? What does getting those numbers together look like? That's so interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, it's a hard work that my colleague is doing. Basically, we are asking all of our suppliers to fill in a questionnaire with a question on their consumption on electricity and water and so on. And that is then calculated together with our consultancy firm. So we're following all the guidelines according to the greenhouse gas protocol. We're also part of an industry member organization in Sweden, together with a lot of other brands, including the bigger ones as well. So we make sure that we are following the same kind of strategy and same kind of reduction goals and so on. And this is the second year that we've done this kind of mapping now. And the thing with the climate mapping, of course, you can do that with like average figures from a database. Like, let's say that you have suppliers in Turkey and you don't know exactly where they are, you can always use the average data on Turkey. But if you have the detail of each factories and each of the raw material suppliers, for example, like we have, it's much easier to get accurate data, basically, for your full supply chain. And that becomes very crucial when you're going to do some kind of reductions later on, because that is, I guess, what we all are aiming for, to make reductions of the CO2 emissions. So again, transparency of the supply chain and having relations with your suppliers, I would say, is crucial to make improvements even in the climate area.
There are people doing it right. It's our job to tell others about them, to support them. We can all think of brands who have the profit to operate with this level of responsibility, but don't. It's up to us to help change that. The good news is, it's possible. Credits this episode go to Hazel Shin, Brian Nickerson, Autumn Collins, and Sandya Lang of Nudie Jeans. That's Nudie jeans.com. Go check them out. All right, gang. I'm Natalie, and I'm out. Till next time.